Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of this newsletter is going to be life equals pain. Well, it's probably not a good way to look at life. And I've actually got an email here from a guy who said that in his, from a viewer who actually said that in his email. So obviously he's going through a difficult time, and he's full of fear, and he's full of doubt. He's having a lot of challenges in his life, and he's just really struggling. And this is something that all of us, all men and women, deal with. We all struggle with feelings like we're not good enough, or that we don't have what it takes, or that things won't work out for us in the future. We're just naturally, we're going to be fearful, because human beings have two primary fears. And the first fear is fear that we're not enough. In other words, we don't have what it takes in order to get what we want, or accomplish what we want, or to become what we want, or to have what we want, if you will. And the second primary fear is fear that we won't be loved and accepted by our friends, family, peer group, potential lovers, etc., etc. And because of that, people tend to move towards what they want. In other words, people will do more to avoid pain than they will do to gain pleasure. And so, unless a person understands their own internal psychology, unless they understand what it is that motivates them to do what they do, like, let me give you an example. Like back when I was in college years ago and I was struggling to pass calculus class, in order to pass calculus, you got to break the homework problems that you're supposed to do every week that you're assigned in class. You got to do a few of them each night. And what I kept doing was, because I was literally afraid that I was not smart enough. I didn't have what it takes to pass the class. And so that was a terrible thing to potentially realize, that, hey, I'm not smart enough to pass this class, because if I can't pass this class, guess what? I can't get my degree. I can't work in the field that I want to work in, and that's really fucking painful. I would sure hate to go through college and do all those classes and not be able to get calculus out of the way, not be able to get my degree and accomplish the things I want. That was really scary. That was really potentially painful. And so what did I do? Oh, hey, look, my favorite TV show's on tonight. You know what? That calculus, I'm going to leave that till tomorrow. You know what? I'm going to do it over the weekend when I have more time to really get involved in it. So the weekend would come around. Oh, I really don't feel like doing fucking calculus problems all day. And I would just come up with the excuse, I need an extra hour of sleep because it's been a long week and I really need some extra sleep. So let me just lay here. So I end up laying in bed for an extra 2 hours or whatever. Then I get up and go, you know what, I'm kind of tired. I think I need to eat something first. You know, got to have plenty of food in my body because, you know, you got to have energy in order to think clearly. But hey, I don't want to go to lunch alone. Let me call one of my buddies. So I call one of my buddies and we hang out. Hey, man, let's have a beer. Oh, all right, 2 beers. I won't have any more than 2 beers. We're just going to hang out, and then I got to get back. And so by the time I finally get home, it's like 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. And then you're thinking, fuck, it's Saturday, boy, those beers sure tasted good. And that was a lot of fun hanging out with my buddy. And it's a hell of a lot more pleasure hanging out with a friend than sitting here doing this fucking calculus homework. And I'm going, you know what? Tomorrow is Sunday. I have all day Sunday I can do this. So everybody's calling me, hey, dude, it's Friday night, man. We got to go out. Or it's Saturday night. We got to go out. And you're like, you know what? You're right. I don't want to miss out. I don't want to miss out on a good time. I may meet somebody when I go out. So I go out and I party, and then I wake up the next day. I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm really hungover. And it's just like, that's basically what happened. And so I get 3 weeks into the semester, and then I'm like, finally, like, I really got to cram this weekend. Because I kept putting it off, because I'm just trying to avoid finding out that I'm too stupid to pass calculus. So in other words, that's the way it manifests itself in my life. Avoiding, again, people would do more to avoid pain than they'll do to gain pleasure. And so I was willing to do more to avoid the potential pain of realizing I was too stupid to pass calculus than the pleasure, the potential pleasure of actually doing the homework and passing the class and getting the degree. It was just really the way I looked at things. It's like what Wayne Dyer says. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So literally, by changing the way I looked at things, instead of focusing on all the pleasure I was going to get by avoiding calculus, I looked at the painful potential consequences of putting off doing my homework. Well, tomorrow I'm going to be twice as far behind. Therefore, the risk of me failing this class or having to drop this class for the 3rd or the 4th fucking time, which it took me, I dropped that class 3 times before I finally disciplined myself and I broke my problems down into small bite-sized chunks that I literally could spend an hour, 45 minutes 5-6 nights a week and breeze through calculus. And when I actually did that and I broke it down to little daily goals, I ended up getting an A in calculus. So obviously I was smart enough to pass calculus, but it's just a strategy. The way I was going about it really sucked ass. So let's go ahead and get in this guy's email. But before we get into it, I've got a quote that I want to share with you. And it says, problems are a sign of life. They are a sign that you still have work to do in this life. That there is more you can become, more you can give, and more you can do to make a positive difference in the world and make it a little better than you found it. Challenges and difficult circumstances are the engines through which we perfect ourselves and become all that we are capable of becoming. Problems do not last forever. Pain is temporary. Even the worst circumstances and setbacks can eventually be overcome. What would you do or begin if you knew you could not fail? If success was simply a matter of time and taking relentless, directed, and focused action towards what you want and want to create for your life. Success is not a straight line. It's a journey full of twists, turns, setbacks, wins, failures, false starts, etc. And the quickest way to ultimate success is in one's willingness to change your approach, persevere, adapt, improvise, overcome, and compensate for whatever obstacles life throws in your way. It's like I was talking about getting through college. It was a simple perspective change that I took in my approach and how I looked at things, and just breaking down this big giant goal of passing calculus into really small daily goals. In other words, just doing a couple of problems each day. They were easy, not that the problems were easy, but when you're only doing a couple of problems each night and you only spend maybe an hour, hour and a half, it's a lot easier to get through that than just putting it all off and saying I'm going to do it on a Saturday or Sunday, where you literally got to spend 8 to 10 hours getting through it. And all you end up doing when I was taking that approach was frustrating the shit out of myself and giving up. And then I would end up dropping the class because I couldn't pass the test because I wasn't prepared. So let's go ahead and get in this guy's email. He says, Dear Coach, he says, I'm going to write you as I would when writing in my diary. I'm going to say everything I have inside me that needs to get out, and maybe this email, being among so many others, will get answered. Good luck. Good news. I'm answering your email in a video. So you got what you were looking for, because why? You wrote a good email. He says, life equals pain. The pain we get is there to shape us into a diamond. I guess in the future I will be able to pay the best whores without looking too expensive. I am young still, and in this small life I get this. Life is pain. 4 years ago I went into a self-help overload period. I read your book 3 times, and now I know my laziness for reading was a joke, but I was lazy to admit it. Haha. He says, I've evolved tremendously, having new insights on attraction, life, music. He says, I'm very passionate about playing guitar, by the way. Good for you. He says, I also have discovered my worst enemies inside, my fears, my conditioning, my struggles that weren't handled very well. He says, I'm struggling right now, Coach. Despite knowing the information on knowing what to do in every situation, I blew it. I was weak, and I didn't have emotional control enough to be a 3% man, so I lost. My first girlfriend of 6 months broke up with me. Dude, at least you had your first girlfriend. That's awesome. It's all how you look at it. See, you're looking at it going, oh, I broke up, I don't have a girlfriend anymore. Instead of saying, you know what? By applying the things that I learned from Corey, at least temporarily, I was able to get a really great girl and have my first girlfriend. That's awesome. There's a lot of guys watching this that are thinking, I'd like to know what it's like to have a girlfriend. How do I do that? Read my book, obviously, for one, and apply it like this guy did. But the key is, this is how you learn. Repetition's the mother of skill. It's just like that's how I learn in calculus, by doing it over and over. I failed 3 times in taking that class before I finally figured out a strategy that would succeed. And the bottom line is, if you keep doing what you've always done, you're going to continue to get what you've always got. But this is what happened. When I was younger, you have your first breakup, you think it's the end of the world, I'm never going to meet anybody else. And then as you get older and you go through relationship after relationship and you date around and you hook up and you realize that you're able to do these things over and over again, even if one situation doesn't work out with a woman, there's always another bus every 15 minutes. That's a fact of life. It's a never-ending sea of people, and it's always changing. as you move about through the world and you go through your careers and your businesses that you're going to have throughout your life, you're always going to be meeting and encountering new people, whether it's an acquaintance or an associate or it's a potential customer. There's always new people coming into your life. You can go to a football game where there's 70, 80, 100,000 people, depending on the size of the stadium, and never see the exact same people, other than maybe if you get like season tickets, then of course, yeah, you're going to see a lot of the same people. But for the most part, when you go to those events, you're never going to see the same people twice. There's always literally going to be thousands of people that you'll never meet again. That's what's cool about life. It's just always circulating. He says, this was 3 weeks ago. We live in a small island in the Azores. She's Ukrainian, and when her mother came here, she worked for my dad, who helped her bring her child to the island. He says, my dad helped bring my future girlfriend into the country. Well, isn't that cool how that works? That's how synchronicity works. You had a desire to meet somebody. You're learning the stuff that I'm teaching, and like attracts like. We live in a vibrational universe where, like I said, like attracts like. So your dad employed somebody, and he hired her as this girl's mother that you dated as an employee because obviously there was a good vibe there. Similar goals, similar values. And therefore, like attracts like. Obviously her kid tends to be like her mother, and obviously your dad liked her enough to want to give her the job working for him. Vibrationally, all of you are kind of in the same vibe, and that's why when you met, you just kind of clicked, and it was easy for you. He says, fucking awesome story, huh? I was like, sounds pretty cool. He says, anyways, here's another thing. I heard this the other day from Dr. Donald Epstein, who founded Network Chiropractic Care, and this is fucking fascinating about DNA. And that is that they did this study where they had women smell the sweatshirts of different men. In other words, these guys went and exercised and sweated, and so they took their clothes when they were done, and they had women randomly sniffing these clothes. They're sniffing their sweatshirt and saying, okay, so pick one that you think would be a really attractive, interesting man. And what was really cool is when they looked at it from the DNA level, is that women where the guy's genetic makeup was very different from their own, they were repulsed universally. They were just not interested. But guys who had a similar genetic DNA makeup to their own, but was different enough to have some variety, they were very attracted to them. And like I said, they're just sniffing their sweatshirt. They're not doing anything else. They're not meeting these guys. They're not talking to these guys. All they know is they're smelling the sweatshirt. And they're getting an impression based upon that. And universally across the board. So what was interesting is that we're naturally attracted to those who are genetically different and diverse from us, but not too diverse to the point where literally if we mated and we had offspring, that those offspring would be so different they couldn't survive in the world. So in other words, when the other person, their genetic makeup was way different than our own, the women were universally repulsed. Isn't that fascinating? I think that shit's fascinating. So he says, anyways, we started out pretty good. I did everything right, and she fell in love with me. And as time went by, she began to reveal parts of herself and her prospects for our future. Well, at least at that particular time, it sounds like you were doing most things right. He says, for instance, sometimes she told me things like, when we break up, etc. Well, that's a clue right there. When we break up? So in her mind, she already knows that your relationship's not going to last. What does that tell me? Obviously, you were not showing up properly. Those are the kinds of things, when a woman says that, you got to go, wait a minute. She's thinking about us breaking up in the future. Now, what is it that I'm doing that causes her to doubt our future? That's a red flag. But the average guy hears they go, nah, I'm going to be different. She ain't going to break up with me because I'm fucking awesome. And so, in other words, what they're guilty of is ignoring reality. And just like Ayn Rand says, you can ignore reality, but you can't ignore the consequences of ignoring reality. He says, I never took it seriously. Big mistake. What'd I just say? So she said that, and he's like, nah, that doesn't apply to me. I'm going to be different. She always said, we never know what can happen in the future. In other words, I know what's going to happen in the future, and I'm probably going to break up with you because you're turning me off. That's what's going on right then and there. He says, by the end of our relationship, I knew she was losing interest. I tried to speak with her more, be there more for her, be sweet, naughty, etc., i.e. you were over pursuing her, and driving her away even more. In other words, you started doing more of what was already turning her off. He says she was giving me excuses not to have sex, like, oh, the condom can break, etc. Obviously, she didn't mind it in the beginning. He said she had all kinds of psychological problems. And she says that she saw shadow people and she did self-harm, and now she's doing light drugs. Oh, she sounds like a winner. Wow, what a catch. She's a pessimist and negative in general. She has a very low self-esteem and she has thin skin, etc. Me, I was always trying to help her with this. You were trying to solve her problems instead of just listening to her, which that's not the way you go about communicating with women. I talk about this extensively in my book. And part of your problem was, obviously, you didn't know the information in my book well enough. You probably read it a couple times, you're like, hey, I got this shit. And then you get into a relationship, and because you still have a huge knowledge gap, you're making mistakes that you don't even know are mistakes. He says, opening her up, like you said, and never ignoring her. He says, I focused on pleasing her sexually, but she never made me come. This made me angry because she wasn't giving a shit. Well, she didn't give a shit because she didn't give a shit. She didn't care. Obviously, you were not doing things properly. She's losing it. Women don't lose interest when you're treating them properly and you're courting them properly. Unless, of course, they're a fucking Fruit Loop, which obviously in this particular case, there's some glaring red flags here. He says, she took a lot of time to answer my texts, and I discovered she was texting 2 other male friends of hers. And one of them was a friend of mine, and she was constantly texting him. She always gave trashy excuses. By the very end, I came to know that she planned on getting out with a friend of hers. But with me, she was wishy-washy sometimes. So in other words, she's got plenty of time to hang out with her friends, but I'm just so busy, darn it. Gosh, maybe next weekend we'll be able to get together. She went out behind my back with a friend of mine who previously liked her to help him with some stuff of his. He says, I stood my ground. I said that this was unacceptable. Later, I was always upset at her because she didn't answer my text and was insecure with her because at the time, she could be hanging out with one of them and I wouldn't even know. Yeah, like now you're just digging a hole. It's just getting worse and worse. You're acting weak. You're acting needy. You're over pursuing. And now you're just, in other words, you're constantly acting like I'm not worthy and I don't deserve you. Remember, life equals pain. So your expectations are, you're going to experience pain. And when you believe that wholeheartedly, look how it affects your actions and the way you think and the way you show up in your relationship. You literally sabotage this relationship because of your belief system, your limiting belief system, if you will. He says, I know I didn't give her space or time to wonder about me at the end, and I was a little bit of a dick to her, but she did things no girlfriend should do. Well, that's understandable. I did the takeaway, but I came to the conclusion that I can't be with her because of all of her shit. He says, I mean, her pussy's awesome, but it's too much for me to handle. When I was drunk, I called her and said mean things to her, but the next day we came and we met and agreed to be just friends. Come on, man. Why would you agree to do that? But now worried that she ignores me as well and she doesn't text or call me and says she is worried about me. She once was a girl that was the love of my life and that I would love and care for no matter what. And I now can't be at home and I'm not focusing on my dreams and my goals. I'm always near her home hoping that I can see her and I'm feeling powerless, ballless, and worried about me. He says, I feel like a fucking woman. I feel that she's moving on with her life, obviously. I mean, look at all the reasons why you gave her why she shouldn't be involved with you at all. Think about it. Would you want to be with you with the way that you've acted? If you were honest with yourself, you're probably going, no, you're right, Corey. I wouldn't want to date me either acting that way. He says that she didn't give a shit about me and I'm the one that's stuck. And he says, I hate this fucking feeling, coach. What can I do to become the best man ever and to end this bullshit mindset and feelings inside me? What you got to realize is you got to accept your situation. You got to say, you know what? I learned a lot from Corey, but obviously, ultimately, I wasn't prepared. And it's like Confucius says, real knowledge is to know the extent of one's ignorance. And obviously, you don't know the information in my book well enough because you were doing and saying a lot of the things that were completely contrary to what I teach in my book. In other words, you were doing things that right in my book, I said, this is going to cause you to be unsuccessful. But yet you did it anyways. Partly because you were fearful and you were in a fearful state, but also partly because you weren't prepared. And why weren't you prepared? Because you didn't read the book 10 to 15 times like I instruct. And therefore, just another thing that Confucius said, success depends upon prior preparation. And without said preparation, there is sure to be failure. And so guess what? You didn't prepare for a potential relationship properly. You just kind of read through the book and you're like, wow, this stuff is great. I totally see it. I totally get it. When I meet the next girl, everything's going to go great. And so you probably read the book 1 or 2 times. And then you got into a relationship. You kind of got into a jam. She started throwing some things at you that you didn't expect. And since you didn't know the book well enough, you started making mistakes. And then you got into a fearful state. And you started doing more of the things that turned her off. And then it just became like you got into a flat spin and just boom. And you crashed your plane. And once that happens, it is what it is. So what you have to do, you have to accept that you obviously fucked up. But you also got to look at the reality of the situation. It doesn't sound like this girl was much of a catch. Even though you had a lot in common and you enjoyed having sex with her and you enjoyed hanging out with her, the bottom line is her goals and values were not aligned with yours. She was obviously lying to you and she was deceiving you. But the one thing I will say is, like, the whole time that you were involved with her, she was letting you know exactly where you stood, i.e., when we break up. In other words, that tells you right then and there she's thinking about breaking up with you eventually. And so when a woman says something like that, that's the kind of thing that should make you go, uh-oh, I didn't expect that. Let me get back to reading Corey's book so I can fill in my knowledge gap and figure out what's wrong. But what did you say? I didn't take her too seriously. So you got to take responsibility. You got to say, you know what? I fucked up. I didn't know the book. Even though Corey told me to read it 10 to 15 times, I didn't listen to him. And so therefore, I fucked up. And because I fucked up, I experienced pain. So you experienced pain because you weren't prepared, but also you really didn't make a good choice. Because had you have also have known the information in my book well enough, you wouldn't have allowed yourself to get so far down the road in a relationship with this girl who really wasn't a good catch to start out with. So it really boils down to preparation and getting to fill in the knowledge gap that you have right now. But hey, dude, you got your first girlfriend. That is a fucking win. You got laid. That's a fucking win, because that's more than you were doing before you found my work. It's all how you look at it. Just like Wayne Dyer said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So in other words, you can focus on the fact that you got dumped. You invited it, though. You asked for it by your own actions and your own admission. Or you can say, you know what? It was a great experience. Yeah, I got dumped. Yeah, I got rejected. But hey, at the end of the day, she wasn't really a great catch. And I got to have a great experience. I got to have my first girlfriend. I got to get laid. I got to have all those fun times I've never had before. That's a win. It's all your perspective change and how you look at it. So what can you do now going forward? Well, she's out of your life. And so obviously you should know by now that chasing, calling, texting, pursuing, acting like a stalker ain't going to get her back. What you need to do is focus on getting back to what you were doing before you met her, which is focusing on your mission, your purpose, the things that are emotionally compelling to you and really exciting. And so like when I coach guys and they're having a hard time after a breakup moving on, a lot of times they don't have a compelling vision for their lives. They don't know what really drives them. They don't have a passion. Maybe they got a career that sucks, or maybe they're not happy with their business or whatever it happens to be. So I spend a lot of time helping guys figure out what their purpose and their mission in life is. Because once you have a compelling vision and a mission for your life, then you have something to look forward to. Then you know what you're striving towards, and then you can be moving towards that. But if you don't even know that yet, you're going to kind of feel like a ship without a rudder, because you're not going to be, the guy that I was talking to right before I filmed this video, he has 2 businesses that he's involved in. And I said, great, tell me what they are on a scale of 1 to 10. One of them was a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10, and the other one was an 8. So I was like, so what would be a 10? And he told me something would be a 10. And it's something completely different than what he's doing right now in these other 2 businesses. And so I said, you got these great 2 businesses that are providing you a good income and a good living, but you got your true passion lies elsewhere. And so now what he's doing is he's doing research to find people that are already succeeding at the highest level, what he ultimately wants to do, so he can model their success. And so once he's done with that research, then he's going to come back to me and he's going to book his next phone session. Because then once he's done all the research and he's got several businesses and several people that are like, I want to be like that person, I want to accomplish what they've accomplished, then I can help him put together a plan that he can execute day in and day out that ultimately will help him get to where he wants to be. And if you have a compelling vision for your life, even if it's going to take 5 or 10 years, at least if you have something to be excited about and look forward to, that's going to affect your self-esteem in a positive way. That's going to affect your ability to be optimistic. Instead of looking at life equals pain, you could say life is exciting. Life is a fucking journey. Life is amazing because I can make it anything I want it to be. So if you'd like to get my help personally to help you figure out what your purpose or your mission is in life, or to help you turn things around, the quickest way is to book a paid phone, Skype, or email coaching session. You can choose any of those options by going to my website, clicking the products tab at the top of your screen on any page of my website, and just following the instructions. And I will talk to you soon.